Hey everyone, Mia here from Resonance Astrology, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at what Mars's ingress in Aquarius means because Mars just moved into Aquarius as of today. We're going to be working with a slideshow, so you have all the slides and you can take screenshots if you want to of the horoscopes and all of that. First, I'm going to talk about the archetype of Aquarius and what Mars in Aquarius even means. Then we're going to go to a transit timeline, so you know what the key transits are. And then finally, we're going to move into the horoscopes for all the 12 signs. And I'll focus mainly on the Mars ingress in Aquarius, the Mars-Pluto conjunction, and the Mars-Uranus square, which is what we're also going to talk about in the horoscopes. Okay, these are not your average horoscopes. We're not just going to talk about what Mars in Aquarius in your ninth house or your 11th house is. I'm also going to talk about the transits and what they also mean in comparison, like within this horoscope as well. So you're also going to know what Mars Pluto conjunction and what the Mars Uranus square mean for your sign. So, first, let's ground us into what Mars in Aquarius as an archetype actually is. And from a traditional perspective, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, just like Capricorn, but this is fixed air. So it's not cardinal Earth, it's fixed air. So the effort here isn't so much about climbing or achieving like it is in Capricorn, even though here as well, I'm simplifying this right now. There's much more to Capricorn as well, and I hate the overachievement narrative of Capricorn. But in Aquarius, this is really about holding a position, staying loyal to an idea, and acting in service of something larger than oneself, because Aquarius is focused more so on the collective. And with Mars in Capricorn, where Mars is exalted, we're saying goodbye to that now. Mars kind of taught us how to act within the structure, and now Aquarius tests whether the structure itself is actually rational and whether we are willing to defend, enforce, or dismantle it. Because Saturn acts as a polar opposite kind of in both of these signs. And I think a lot of time when we look at Saturn in a modern sense, there's a lot of like very rigid ideas about what Saturn is and what Saturn isn't. But Saturn rules over the aspect of opposition, and so oftentimes Saturn rules what is within the bounds just as much what is outside the bounds. So Saturn rules just as much as it does over the elite and like the 1% and everything what is like inside the walls, as much as it also does over outcasts. And this is, I think, what a lot of people miss, and a lot of people associate that with a modern rulership of Uranus being ruled by Aquarius, but Saturn actually used to have a lot of these significations as well. And I think this is the part where I just really dislike where we moved away when actually Aquarius has a lot of like rigid traditional ideas because it's an air sign in itself as well, and that is very Saturnine. Like once you go into it more depth, like you'll realize just how Saturnine Aquarius actually is. And so again, Aquarius, fixed air, Saturn, right? So it's about holding ideas, it's about holding principles and doctrines. It's about having allegiance to a system of thought, okay? And like long term, there can be a rigidity of belief in the sign of Aquarius, where Aquarius often feels like, well, I don't want to do things the old way. I want to do it the new way. But the new way is just as rigid in and of itself. Let's not forget that last time Pluto was in Aquarius, and here in Europe, we had the French Revolution. The idea of enlightenment was born, which was a new idea, was in its essence very freaking rigid in and of itself, right? Because all of a sudden, it wasn't about, which I think was much more Pluto and Capricorn, about like aristocracy and the people on the top. Now it was about the people and the folk. But if you weren't for that, well, you could get just as much beheaded as any other person as well. So I do want to give credit to where credit is due, but I do also want to tell people just how rigid Aquarius is because I think right now a lot of people are or not even realizing, right? Because everybody was so excited for the age of Aquarius, and now we are kind of in the age of Aquarius, and people are realizing It's not as bright as people thought. And there's a lot of dark shadow sides of Aquarius as well. One of them certainly being about this very rigid side. And I am also kind of highlighting this because Pluto right now is in Aquarius, and Pluto conjunct Mars, very big transit of this Mars ingress. So this is definitely coming up. And the rigidness of Aquarius, is it because it doesn't bend easily in its ideas and it defends its logic, whatever that logic is, right? And it resists emotional persuasion. Aquarius as an archetype, okay, we're looking at this as an archetype right now, not as a in-person chart reading. But Aquarius as an archetype is very much about like detachment. And Aquarius also is the only sign, if you think about it, that has a function. All the other signs are like animals, or okay, Virgo is the virgin. Aquarius is the water bearer. It's the only sign that has a function in its full name, the water bearer. That tells us so much about Aquarius because it means that Aquarius is much more about the doing than it is about the being. And this is exactly where the rigidness sometimes, or the fixedness, maybe that's the better word. Like, I don't just want to place Aquarius into a group of just being rigid. Okay, Aquarius is not just rigid, but it is fixed air. So there is something to it. Um, and so Aquarius, symbolized by the water bearer, it isn't about the emotion. The water that Aquarius bears, like that's probably in like evolutionary astrology where we go then into the sign of Pisces. But it's doing something, it's bearing something, which again is a very Saturnine word, bearing something, bearing the weight of the world. Well, Aquarius isn't like Capricorn bearing the weight of the world in a Capricornian way. It's bearing the weight of the world, where it feels like it's very much responsible for humanity and the progress of humanity, and where humanity is going or not going. And a lot of people with Aquarius placements, if they have a lot, and maybe you can find yourself in this as well, can be more concerned with humanity than actually being a human being, because that's the function where it disassociates from it, right? It's about like it's so easy for Aquarius to focus on humanity, on being there for other humans and focusing on the progress of all of it. Being a human with human needs, like I have to eat, I have to sleep. Like, what is that? Like basic human tasks. What is that? Of course, it's not just black and white, but I do think Aquarius definitely has that internal struggle a lot, or people with Aquarius placements. And so Mars in Aquarius, when we put Mars there, fights for principles, not for recognition. It moves according to belief and not for impulse. And once Mars in Aquarius commits, it doesn't easily budge, just like Mars in Capricorn, but from like a belief type of way. And I think Mars in Aquarius is a lot about orientation and what we are willing to challenge, disrupt, or liberate ourselves from. But again, we just have to be careful that, and that so often happens. And that's why I'm so fascinated by the fact that Saturn rules over the opposition aspect. And let me know if you've experienced this in your own life. Sometimes we get away from something only to fall into the complete opposite end of that thing. I see it sometimes with people that have addictions. All of a sudden they quit and they go to an AA meeting or something, newly awakened, new life, Aquarius, right? Then they become so rigid in their new ways where all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't go out to drink anymore at all. Like nobody around me can have a drink of alcohol in their hands, and dare you if you do. And now, since I got free and I got liberated, I'm gonna go free and liberate everyone else that is struggling as well. So we almost fall into the opposite things that we were. And that so often can happen with Aquarius and when Mars is in Aquarius as well, because Mars in Aquarius is very strategic in like how it detaches itself and the conviction and resolve it has once it has it. And again, oftentimes The good side, of course, with Mars and Aquarius is that a lot of action is going to be in service of the collective and for the collective. Again, detachment isn't just a bad thing. Okay, I think there's a lot of healthy detachment that Aquarius can teach us as well, and there's so much that we can learn from that as well. And there's like a healthy dose of empathy that we do need right now for the collective as well. And sometimes it helps us to detach ourselves emotionally and be simply in service to humanity because that's what we need right now. And again, there's also a lot of action against momentum. Aquarius often does this thing where it's like, I'm not going to follow the popular route. I'm going to follow the other route. So, yes. And again, very loyal. Let's not forget all the fixed signs, very, very loyal. Okay. Obviously, in different ways, because all of them have different elements. But in the air element, Aquarius, very loyal to concepts rather than forms. Like this is more like Taurian territory. Yes. So, and disciplined rebellion, which we're going to talk about that in the next slide, which is the transit timeline. Okay, so the purpose of this timeline is context. So it shows us where the pressure is building and when it's building and when things are peaking and when Mars changes signs into the next sign. And at first glance, maybe if you watch the other horoscopes video, I feel like there were so many transits. Here we actually don't have a lot of transits. I think, though, they are very, very freaking powerful. And besides that, besides the Mars-Pluto conjunction and the Mars-Uranus square, we have a whole Aquarius stellium throughout the entire month of February. We have the solar eclipse in Aquarius in February, marking a new cycle where slowly the nodes are going to be shifting from Virgo and Pisces into the sign of Aquarius and Leo. We also have Saturn moving into the sign of Aries, which is going to obviously change how all the Aquarius planets are expressing themselves because they're always going to be informed by what Saturn is doing. And we also have a Neptune Saturn conjunction. So there is maybe not a lot of transits that are going on, but there is a very big emphasis on Aquarius throughout all of February. So it's not going to be boring at all, even though Mars is maybe not directly involved. And even in the transits, Mars is involved. I mean, heck, with these two outer planets, Pluto and Uranus, I mean, that's my deepest respect to interact with both of them. And all planets going through Aquarius are going to be doing that. Some already have done that this week. We already had Venus Pluto conjunction, Mercury Pluto conjunction. Today, as a matter of fact, we had the Sun Pluto conjunction. And then early next week, again, January 28th, we're going to have the Mars Pluto conjunction. By the way, on Instagram, I will be posting horoscopes specifically for the Mars Pluto conjunction. And then on February 27th, a month later, we're going to have the Mars Uranus square, which both very, very interesting. Now let's dissect them just a bit more because I am going to be focusing on them in the horoscopes. But obviously, in the first part, like let's just look at this from an archetypal level, and in the horoscopes, it's going to be more suited towards the sign because it's going to fall in the specific houses and everything. So, Mars conjunct Pluto, January 28th. There is definitely a very concentrated force every time that Mars and Pluto align in some sort of way, especially if it's a conjunction, if it's an opposition, or if it's a square. This is definitely very deep, concentrated force that can sometimes be harsh to deal with, like, not gonna lie. Um, there is, with the air element, I think there's a lot of decisions to be made. Obviously, Mercury is in Aquarius too, so of course it's about decisions. Perhaps some decisions you have made this week with Mercury and Pluto conjunction. There's a lot of power that is clashing against a will with Mars Pluto. So I think generally and collectively, and maybe also personally, this will show up in ideological power struggles. We're already seeing it right now in the world. Coercion around belief systems, forced alignment of exclusion, and We are definitely seeing that right now, especially in the US and some other places. And I'm, as an astrologer, I just want to say that I want to be honest and real when talking about things. And at the same time, I don't hope for the worst case scenarios. I always hope for the best case scenarios. And it deeply saddens me that often globally, at least what makes the news is often the worst case scenarios of these transits, as a lot of that we are seeing right now. Um, Again, this can also be the shadow of, oops, excuse me. Hope that was not too um, stingy on your ears. Okay, so the shadow of the right idea. Because again, as I already said, Aquarius can be very rigid in its ideas. Actually, it's interesting if we look at internet trends and the last time, like 2021, when Jupiter and Saturn were both in the sign of Aquarius, this was the rise of a lot of tradwife trends, which is so Aquarius, taking something traditional but putting a modern twist on it and calling it progress. Anyhow, I'm not trying to hate on trad wives. I literally have such a trad wife style. Like, anyhow, uh, and then there's also collective pressure to conform to a doctrine, which again, you know, we are seeing this right now. This is very fixed. I'm going to pronounce that word right. Authoritarianism, not a liberation fantasy. Especially not, I'm like maybe in the beginning when like Neptune is still, but actually we have Neptune is literally moving into Aries on Monday. There's just like 2 days left of Neptune being in Pisces. So I do think with that fresh energy of Neptune also being in Aries, there's no more fantasy anymore. There's no more, there's someone gonna save me. It's I save myself. That's Aries about myself. I have to save myself. Yes. So I just want to say that this is not a climax yet. I mean, certainly it is in this context, but this isn't a long-term initiation. It's more like because this transit, okay, we already had this one time. The last time we had this was February 14th of 2024. So roughly 2 years ago, which makes sense. Mars takes around 2 years to go through the zodiac and return to its place again. And so last year, interestingly enough, Mars was retrograde in Leo and Cancer. But we did have a Mars-Pluto position in the retrograde phase exactly between Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, I said it right. And so there is because Pluto is going to be in Aquarius until like 2043, we have a lot of time with Pluto in Aquarius. So roughly every 2 years we're going to get that transit again. So it is a long-term type of what kind of power are you learning to wield long term? And obviously this is going to depend on which part in your chart this is activating. Globally, this is about who controls the narrative, which I think is a very interesting question to pose right now. Critical thinking. Aquarius is amazing at critical thinking, even though, again, can be stuck up and rigid in its own beliefs. Okay, and then let's talk about the Mars-Uranus square a bit more in depth. And I actually love this. Usually I don't have so much time because there's so much transits going on. I love that I can talk a bit more in depth about both of these transits because they're so prominent. And so here we have something interesting going on. Aquarius fixed air. This is mental rigidity. Taurus fixed earth. This is material rigidity. So the square, and the squares always bring tension, is kind of ideas versus resources, principle versus bodies, beliefs versus survival. And Mars acts as a trigger here. And this is not random disruption. This is a fracture between what is believed and what can actually be sustained. And naturally, 2 years ago, we had Mars also in Aquarius. So this isn't a new thing. Actually, this is the last time this is happening in this constellation. So we had this transit in March of 2024, 2022, April 2020, and then first time we actually had the square at 0 degrees of Uranus's first ingress into Taurus on May 16 of 2018. So these are all dates that if you like digging deep, you could technically go back on and see what was happening, even though I would be more curious globally what's happening, because oftentimes outer planets make very interesting global strides. And now this is the last time, okay? This is the last time that this is happening in this constellation. After that, it's going to be between Uranus in Gemini and Mars and Pisces. I almost wanted to say Mars and Sagittarius, but that's going to be the opposition. So, a new field, a totally new playing field. And so this is more of like a release point, which is interesting with both of these transits. Like one is kind of like starting this like long-term deep transformation that is happening, and then one is kind of closing it off. And both Pluto and Uranus are very intense, especially when they are paired up with Mars. So even though it's just two transits, these two transits are no freaking joke. And again, all of this is still happening under a Saturnian sky, a Saturnian rulership. So Mars in Aquarius begins while Saturn is still in Pisces, and then mid-February, February 14th, Saturn moves into Aries, followed almost immediately by an Aquarius eclipse, and then the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So just as I said, even when Mars isn't making exact aspects, it's operating inside a field that's shifting very fast and rapid. And we have a whole Aquarius stellium going on right now, anyways. So it's an agglomeration. Like your part, your Aquarius part of your chart is so freaking highlighted throughout all of February. So things are shifting, things are changing underneath the actions we are taking. And now, let's slowly head into horoscopes, but before we fully talk about horoscopes, I do recommend watching for your rising sign, as this will give you the clearest sense of where Mars is activating your chart. But if you don't know your rising sign, that is completely fine. You can listen for your sun sign and take whatever resonates. And there's one really important thing I want to name before we go into horoscopes, in case you haven't watched the transit timeline. I do want you to know this. The Mars-Uranus square that perfects later is a transit, is actually the last Mars-Uranus square in this particular constellation. So we've been working with this tension between disruption and resistance, innovation and instability every 2 years since around 2018. And so while this square can still bring sudden change, it's also marking the completion of a longer cycle. Something we've been reacting to for years is reaching a turning point. At the same time, the Mars-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius is kind of doing the opposite. We first encountered this energy in 2024, and this is only the second exact time both Mars and Pluto are conjuncting. So this is still very new, and it's part of a much longer story because Pluto will remain in Aquarius until 2043. So what we're seeing here is an ending and a beginning happening simultaneously. A revolutionary pattern is kind of coming to a close, and a deeper, more structural transformation is just beginning to take form. And let's not forget that Uranus and Pluto are going to form a very, very interesting sign once Uranus moves into Gemini. But that is for another time. With that in mind, let's fully dive into the horoscope, looking at what Mars in Aquarius is going to be doing in your sign. So, Aries suns, Aries risings, welcome to your horoscope. Mars is entering your 11th house of alliances, of patrons, benefactors, and long-term aims and visions. So, your energy is shifting towards the future, not necessarily personal ambition, but collective direction. And the Mars-Uranus square brings a tension between long-term goals, alliances, and benefactors, which is your 11th house, and material security and income, which is your second house. So a year-long pattern that has been going and activating this since 2018 is reaching its limit, okay? Where your collective aims and what you maybe want to do with groups and your visions, destabilizing your resources, that has definitely reached its limit this time, and you cannot continue sacrificing stability for the group's sake or vice versa. And then at the same time, Mars Pluto conjunction begins a much longer transformation in how you align with groups, with causes, with collaborations. So, this is about power, loyalty, and long term commitment and not quick wins. And I mean, dear Aries, you're fully booked this year anyways with Saturn and both Neptune moving into your first house. That will be transforming so much, but these are Mars in Aquarius horoscopes, so we're not going to talk about that so much, but did just want to mention that as well. So let's move on to Taurus. So Mars is moving into your 10th house of public action, of authority, and of reputation. So this is a very highly visible period where decisions carry weight, and the Mars-Uranus square brings a shift, like a final shift between your public role and authority, which is your 10th house, and your body identity and autonomy, which is your first house. And since 2018, repeated disruptions have forced constant self adjustment. I mean, you know it best because you have been experiencing Uranus in your first house since that time. So this square kind of marks the end of reshaping yourself to meet external demands. I love that for you. And I love Uranus moving out of your first house as well. So, and meanwhile, the Mars Pluto conjunction begins a long term restructuring of your relationship to authority and to leadership. This is the start of a deeper power shift in your public life that will unfold over years, not just weeks. And again, Taurus rising, I think you're gonna just generally feel a bit more relaxed, certainly when Uranus moves outside of your first house, because it's been sitting there since a while, since 2018 and fully since 2019. So again, I hope this brings a bit more stability in your life. Hello, Gemini, Gemini suns and Gemini risings. So, Mars is entering your ninth house of belief systems, of meaning, making meaning, searching for meaning, and higher knowledge. So, your actions are increasingly guided by principle rather than convenience. And the Mars-Uranus square marks the end of a tension in your chart between, again, your belief systems and long range direction and meaning making, and hidden strain, retreat, or unconscious instability, which is your 12th house. And a worldview that required self erasure or a constant internal stress can no longer be sustained. I'm sure there's so many things that you have reworked over that time that Uranus was going through your 12th house. I certainly know a lot of Gemini risings that have been going through deeply transformative therapy and realizing their patterns and creating new meaning for them. And I feel like you're gonna have a fun time, with Uranus going into your first house over the next 7 years. Certainly can be very destabilizing in and of itself, but I think you're certainly gonna manage it better than Taurus risings because you have a naturally kind of chaotic, disruptive energy in and of itself, which very much fits with Uranus. And then the Mars Pluto conjunction, however, begins a much longer transformation, how you commit to truth, to purpose, and worldview. What you stand for now has long-term consequences. And again, you're going to have a very interesting constellation this year because you're going to get a trine once Uranus moves into Gemini. It's going to form long-term like trine relationships to Pluto in Aquarius. So your first and your ninth will be very much activated. And this is going to fundamentally shift like how you show up in the world and how you present yourself, and especially what you present, like what knowledge you're putting out and pouring out. So interesting times ahead for you, dear Geminis. Then Cancer Sun and Cancer Risings, hello, hello. Mars is moving into your eighth house of shared resources, obligations, and entanglements. And this is definitely an intense and consequential transit for you to go through. The eighth house is a more difficult house to deal with. And so, but the Mars Uranus square brings a final activation of conflicts between exactly those shared resources and obligations and entanglements that often find us in the eighth house, and then of your friends, networks, or collective goals, which is your 11th house. Because since 2018, group involvement may have destabilized your financial or emotional security, and that pattern reaches an end point now, which I love for you. And obviously, you have been very lucky and blessed. Your Cancer risings with Jupiter being in your first house this year as well till mid-year. And let's not forget, okay, Jupiter is going to move into Leo in your second house, and I think that's going to be a very interesting point where you're finally going to be able to focus more a bit on yourself. I think a lot of these outer planets have really been like focusing on other people. And I know you tend to be a sign that focuses a lot on other people in general. And I do think that's ending now. And there's a big, deeper focus on yourself and what you can do and what you can sustain for yourself. So I love that. And then at the same time, Mars Pluto conjunction initiates a deep transformation in how you share your power, your trust, and vulnerability. Okay. Pluto in the eighth house can do a lot of wonders. I think if there's any placement that Pluto would do well or have it has its joy in would be the eighth house, because the eighth house is also called in ancient times the gates of Hades, like the entrance of to the gates of Hades. So of course Pluto would do well there. And I do think there's a lot of potential for Pluto to really transform that in a very good way. And this is the beginning of a long process of reclaiming your control in situations where others are involved, like taking back your power. So, love it for you, dear Cancers. Then we're moving to Leo. Let me just take a sip of water. Okay, dear Leo suns and dear Leo risings, Mars is entering your seventh house of close one-on-one relationships, partnerships, and relationships demand action and clarity right now from you. This Mars-Uranus square brings the end of a tension between exactly sad relationships that you're having, which is your seventh house. And your seventh house, I mean, there's a lot going on in your seventh house. And since you're a fixed sign as well, this is all deeply affecting you because it's affecting your angular houses, which are very, very loud. And you have so much going on in the seventh house, which, by the way, sometimes can also talk about your partner if you have one, if you have a close one-on-one relationship with someone. Sometimes they can get the activations from what is going on in the seventh house. Just want to make that clear. But to bring it back to that Mars-Uranus square that is happening, okay, between your seventh house of close one-on-one relationships and your 10th house, which is career direction or public authority, there is a tension between these two houses that is kind of coming to an end, okay? Like there's been repeated disruption since 2018 between personal commitments and public expectations, and they kind of culminate at this point, and so something has to change. Definitely. Okay, a relationship role must change form or how you are showing up in the world. And meanwhile, the Mars Pluto conjunction begins a long term shift in how power, commitment, and accountability function in your closest, most intimate relationship. So, this is not a quick resolution, it's an initiation into a deeper relational truth. And there's gonna be you, okay, Leos. I know this is a bit future tripping right now, but there is something very interesting that will be going on this summer, and you certainly have very interesting activations this year because Jupiter is going to move into your first house, making you the star and highlighting you for this year. But there's also going to be the South Node that is moving into your first house as well, and Mars. half a year later is also going to be in your first house. Or no, sorry, not half a year later. It's going to be more like end of the year. But there's going to be a very interesting Mars-Jupiter conjunction that is happening in your house. And I'm going to be excited to talk about that when it happens. But do look out for that as well. But that's what I have for you for now, dear Leos. So, Virgo suns, Virgo risings. Hello, hello. Mars is moving into your sixth house of labor, of routine, and of bodily discipline. So, your daily effort becomes a focal point this time around, and definitely throughout all of February because all of the Aquarius planets are activating that part of your chart. And the Mars Uranus square marks the end of a chaotic pattern around your daily labor, bodily discipline, and service, which is sixth house, against your beliefs, your education, or your future plans, which is Uranus in that ninth house. Because since 2018, your work may have been destabilizing by shifting your philosophies or directions. So, a belief that undermines sustainability must be released right now for good for you. And at the same time, the Mars Pluto conjunction initiates a longer process of reclaiming authority over how you work and how you expend your energy. So, this is about restructuring effort in a sustainable, long term way. Definitely, the sixth house isn't the easiest house, and I think you're going to have a deep transformation regardless, with the eclipses also happening over your sixth and 12th house. Certainly, no, for me, when the eclipses were happening across my sixth and 12th house, which is another, it's like Aries and Libra for me. So it's not the same signs, but they were deep. Like I came out a completely different person. But I do not want to sugarcoat things, okay? These were not the easiest eclipses for me. Not the easiest life year for me. Required a lot for me. The sixth house requires a lot. But I do also know, Virgo, that if there's any sign that is equipped, like you are equipped, like you are the sign of preparation. Because in the northern hemisphere, you come right before the autumn equinox, and Virgo is all about preparation of harvest season, of prepping, planning, organizing. So there is something that is gonna fit for you. I think, at least I hope so. And again, I think Uranus shifting out of your ninth house certainly gonna make you relax just a little bit more and not make you constantly overthink so much. Which I know the third house has a lot to do with like our thinking and everything, but the ninth house has a lot to do with our beliefs and like our grand overview and all of that. And I do think you might just get a little bit more relaxed once Uranus moves out of your ninth house. But I will say that Uranus in the 10th house is going to be demanding in a different way, in a more public way. So, but this is what I have for you for now. Certainly, you have interesting transits going on for you this year. So, let's talk about Libra. Libra sounds and So, Libra suns and Libra risings, Mars is entering your fifth house of creativity, of pleasure, and of desire. And so your expression becomes purposeful rather than playful. And the Mars Uranus square marks the final break between your creative expression, your pleasure, and your romance, to fifth house, and shared finances, emotional depths, or dependency, which is your eighth house, Uranus in your eighth house. So a long-standing pattern where desire destabilized security reaches its breaking point right now for you, which I think is gonna be interesting. And I mean, you're gonna have like Saturn, Neptune moving into your seventh house. And I've been saying this since last year. Like Libra has some very freaking interesting constellations, and actually the most unique one, I would say, the most unique one, because Libra is the only sign that is getting a full on freaking trine from Uranus moving into Gemini, going to trine your ascendant. Pluto in Aquarius going to trine your ascendant. And then Neptune and Saturn in Aries are going to oppose your ascendant. So, especially if you are a Libra rising, you have your rising sign at the very first few degrees, like this is gonna impact you so freaking hard and so deeply transform you. Like this year is gonna be crazy for you. Like with this unique constellation, like that's a once in a lifetime constellation that you're getting. Like everyone that's like a a 0 to 5 degree Libra rising, like you're getting a once in a lifetime transit. So that is going to be a lot. Um, I do think it's very useful that especially Uranus is moving outside of your eighth house into your ninth house. Um, so anyways, meanwhile, I do also want to talk about the Mars-Pluto conjunction. This is beginning a longer transformation. How you relate to passion, to creation, and to risk. What you invest your heart and energy in now is going to be carrying a lot of weight in the future because this is a long-term transit. So, I didn't want to future trip you out too much here, Libra. So this is what I have for you right now. And then Scorpio. Hello, Scorpio suns and risings. I said a very, very weird hello in the beginning. Anyhow, Mars is moving into your fourth house of home, of foundations, and of emotional roots. So your private life is becoming activated. And oh boy, is it becoming activated with all these freaking Aquarius transits this month. And you're also a fixed sign. So this is happening in your angular houses. So it means it's very prominent. And the Mars Uranus square marks the end of a conflict between home foundations and family, which is your fourth house, and partnership dynamics, which is Uranus being your seventh house. Since 2018 is when relational instability may have shaken your sense of grounding. Certainly, I, as a Scorpio rising, I can tell you, like, when Uranus moved into my seventh house, it was so loud. It flip turned my relational life upside down. And so, something now must stabilize or separate. Okay, this is happening one last time. We know this. Okay, Scorpios, Leos, Taurians, and Aquariuses. Like we have been experiencing Uranus on the angles since 2018. So we know this energy and this is like a final goodbye, you know? So we've or like we're it's fixed signs, okay? We don't like the Uranus energy. Like it's very hard for us to deal with that Uranus energy. And when it's in the angles especially. And so now it's really just about like saying goodbye one last final time. Like we can do this. And then let's talk about the Mars Pluto conjunction that is beginning a deep and lasting transformation of your foundations, of your roots, of your ancestry. And this is about redefining also safety, belonging, and control at the root level of your life because the fourth house is the base. Yes. Okay, let's move on to Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings. Hello, hello. Mars is entering your third house of communication, of learning, and of daily movement. So your words and decisions are gaining momentum. And the Mars Uranus square marks the end of a tension in your chart between your daily environment, again, siblings, obligation, and like short term travel, which is third house, and your work, routines, health, and your service, which is Uranus in your sixth house and a pattern of constant adjustment in everyday life that disrupted sustainability is reaching an endpoint now. I'm certainly sure that Uranus in your sixth house has been doing a lot of groundbreaking work in how you are taking care of yourself and how you are showing up at work, at your job, and your daily routines. Meanwhile, the Mars Pluto conjunction initiates a long term shift in how you use your voice and how you use your self expression. And conversations now shape power dynamics that will continue to develop over time. And there is so much more to be said about that third house, to be completely honest. There is, it's so much more. It's like the realm of the goddess. It's where the moon has its joy. It's it's so also about rituals and omens and synchronicities, which do also have to do with our speaking and thinking and all of that. There's a lot of things shifting. Excuse me. And I think you're also one of the signs that has a very interesting shift ahead of you, especially when it comes to your relationship lives and all of that, because you have Uranus going through your seventh house, which is going to completely shift and change how you show up and or how people show up in your life. You have Aries is ruling your fifth house, which is all about like romance and dating and all of that. Like, and then we have that third house, which, yeah, it isn't, but it's about like our neighborhoods and everything. Gosh, for all you know, you could like, there's a new neighbor moving in and you fall in love with that neighbor. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, that would 100% happen. There's definitely, like, dear Sagittarius, is like, your relationship life is completely freaking shifting this year. And I want you to be aware of that. But this is what I have for now. And we're going to move on to Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings. Mars is moving into your second house of income, of resources, and of self-worth. So your action is turning towards material stability and value, which is, that's inherently you, I would say. But we have to talk about a Mars-Uranus square that is bringing a final disruption in your material security and self-worth, which is your second house, against creative risks, pleasure, and romantic instability, which is Uranus being active in your fifth house since 2018. So excitement may have undermined stability for a while now, but this cycle is risking security for stimulation that is ending here right now. And at the same time, the Mars-Pluto conjunction begins a longer process of redefining what you value and how you secure your resources. So, again, not a quick fix, it's a deeper structuring of worth and sustainability, which I think you can deal with especially good. Pluto in the second house, long term wise, can bring a lot of wealth, can also take a lot of wealth. Pluto makes big things small and small things big. So just be wary when it comes to like stocks, investments, and all of the things, etc. So, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. And you certainly have a lot of interesting transits coming up as well, with Uranus moving into your sixth house and Saturn and Neptune shaping your fourth house. There's going to be a lot of forces moving into your daily routines, your family, and your ancestry. But again, this horoscope is not about that. So this is what I have for right now. And dear Aquarius, so Aquarius' suns and risings, hello, hello. Mars is entering your first house, highlighting you. And you're generally being super freaking highlighted the whole month of February. There's a whole Aquarius stellium that is going through your first house. So this is definitely a very highly charged period of self-assertion. Your presence is going to become stronger, sharper, and more consequential. The Mars-Uranus square is marking the end of an ongoing tension between self-direction, bodily autonomy, which is your first house, and home, family, or emotional foundations, which is your fourth house. Again, this is also happening across your angular houses, which means it's deeply impactful. Years of instability around belonging or living conditions are culminating in a decisive shift right now, which is interesting because I know it's something that Aquarius has often struggled with in general, like not fitting in. But I do think that Uranus in the fourth house has amplified, like tripled that impact. And I do think it's going to shift into a bit more stability once Uranus moves into your fifth house. And again, there's so many things happening in your first house. I mean, Pluto is there long term. And now let's look at that Mars-Pluto conjunction that is also happening and beginning a profound identity transformation that will continue developing throughout Pluto's time in Aquarius, which is a long time, like the next 20 years. So this is not a conclusion, it's the start of a long personal initiation. And I will say that Pluto is a very, very slow moving planet. So if you have your rising at even 16 degrees of Aquarius, it's gonna take Pluto a while to get there. And I'm not saying you're not feeling the shift. You probably already did definitely feel the shift or the ingress, but I will say it's gonna get the loudest once Pluto really moves closer and closer. I would give it a 3 degrees range, give and take, where you're gonna feel it the most. But I do think that's just important to note because there's people that are gonna have their Aquarius rising at what 28 degrees. Like that's gonna happen in like what 2040 that you're gonna get Pluto conjoining your ascendant. So don't be freaking out right now. And you probably also don't need to be freaking out then either. That's what I oftentimes tell to people. Sometimes we future trip and we look at future transit and we're like, how the heck should I survive that? Like, this looks grim, this looks crazy. I think certainly Pluto conjoining the ascendant is such a transit where I would be worried. But at the same time, when it's like when it comes, we'll know what to do with it because the like archetypal layer of that is going to be active in our life and it's going to make sense at that point. So again, even if you have a very late degrees Aquarius rising and you're like super scared and anxious what it's going to mean when Pluto is actually conjoining your ascendant, when you're there, it's gonna make so much sense. So don't fret right now. Okay, don't fret right now. And certainly, there is your first house is being activated this whole February anyways, in a very large part. So you are the star of this month, Aquarius. That's what I have for you for now. And then Pisces suns and Pisces risings. Hello, hello. Mars is moving into your 12th house of withdrawal, of endings, and a lot of unseen effort and things that is going on behind the scenes. So a lot of your energy is going to be turning inwards, which, is interesting to say concerning the fact that there's so much that is being going on in Aquarius in your 12th house. And you're also like Neptune is just moving out of your first house. Saturn is going to be moving slowly, shortly, not slowly, shortly out of your first house as well, which I love for you. That's been a long time coming. But there is with that 12th house stellium activation Aquarius, I do think there is still a lot of withdrawal that is going on right now with you. And, I think it's a good thing. I feel like you can deal with that quite well. And we're still in the midst of winter, so it's okay to be a bit withdrawn and to have the energy focused on a more internal level. Because once Mars moves into your first house, and there's also a lot of planets, in Pisces season that we're going to kind of have a Pisces stellium as well. So there's going to be a lot of planets again in your first house. So take a break, take some rest. So let's talk about the Mars-Uranus square as marking the end of a tension between withdrawal, exhaustion, and hidden terrain. Again, 12th house with your daily environment, your siblings, or constant obligations, which is your third house. And constant obligations it's not like the sixth house. I mean it really in like a doing your daily rituals type of way, which is more fun. And so a cycle of invisible overload caused by everyday demands is finally breaking. Because, I mean, Mars is super powerful in a 12th house, by the way. And then let's talk about that Mars-Pluto conjunction that is also happening in your such 12th house. This is a deep internal transformation. Definitely. This is the start of a long process of confronting what has been buried and reclaiming power quietly from behind the scenes. I do also want to say, just because like having an Aquarius stellium in your 12th house, like is no joke. If you do need therapy, like there's no shame in taking up a few extra therapy sessions this month around. You're not alone in this. So, this is what I have for you guys. If you've liked this, make sure we stay connected. You can follow me on Instagram, where again, sometimes I post like a smaller chunk of all of what I've been talking right now. Usually I focus on one transits and I make horoscopes just for that in written form. This time around, I'm going to be focused on Mars conjoining Pluto. On YouTube, again, you're already watching this on YouTube, but if you've liked this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what your rising sign is and what your experience has been so far, and feel free to subscribe. And my website is Resonance Astrology. You can reach me there through email, which you can find on the website. And this is what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye.